Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Now I'm probably giving you all a bit of a clue as to what's coming, but today you're going to get two games for the price of one, and the reason I'm taking this approach is because although these titles deal with different battles, they both are designed to identical game systems, a bit like the Great War at Sea series, and they represent one of those marvelous combinations where a museum, in this case the Smithsonian Institution, teamed up with a premier games designer, in this case Avalon Hill Games, and they conspired, in a good way, to produce this. So in the early 1990s, we were treated to this appearing on our shelves. I think it was about 1992 that Midway first came out. And Midway represented one of a series of at least four games dealing with the history of the Second World War that, as I say, was created as a result of this lovely partnership between the Smithsonian and Avalon Hill. Now, the two of the others, one of the others dealt with D-Day and the Normandy campaign in general, and the other one, I believe, was a single aircraft air combat simulator, both of which were very highly regarded. But I did mention four, and what I mean by that is, of course, Midway was one of the games. I think it was probably the third one to come out. But we also got almost immediately afterwards its companion game, Guadalcanal. Now, both these games were based to a degree on games that Avalon Hill had made before, but there were some slight deviations. So both of them are strategic in scope with some tactical elements thrown in. But they gloss over almost completely. In fact, they do totally in Midway, and they kind of nod to it in Guadalcanal, but despite the picture showing US Marines and Japanese Army infantry, this game and Midway are actually aeronaval in scope. The closest you get to anyone getting their boots dry, if I can put it that way, is in Guadalcanal particularly, and also in one scenario in Midway. The Japanese player has to move transports into contact with the land mass, and from that point they then have to spend a turn or two in the hex unloading. So there's no ground combat, so it's not the most comprehensive of Pacific War experience games, but these games are good, and they give you plenty to do in the air and naval context. So I had mentioned that they were both designed around an identical system of rules with, the scenario books and the units are obviously tweaked for the different campaigns. So how did they achieve this? Well, I'm going to show you the basic rules for these games, and I stress these are just the basic rules. There you go. That is the basic set of rules for Guadalcanal. And yes, the print is extremely fine, but everything is on two sheets of paper, and they do a pretty good job of explaining the components, the concepts, and how the game is supposed to function. And this is very important because the concept that drove the creation of this entire series was to get more people into the hobby of wargaming. And what Avalon Hill and the Smithsonian were both striving for was an attempt to create a game with enough simplicity that someone who'd never played a war game before would be able to get into it. They'd be able to look at this and go, oh, that doesn't look too threatening. I can get my head around this. They were quite affordable for the time. I do remember that. I bought my copy of Guadalcanal new back in the 1990s. And if you'll indulge me a personal recollection, I didn't have enough money, impoverished student at the time, to afford both games. The shop I visited had both Midway, boxes are a bit too darn big, had both Midway and Guadalcanal next to each other. And I spent ages agonizing over this because I thought, oh man, the two of the greatest campaigns of the war in the Pacific. The reason I chose Guadalcanal in the end was I felt it had a bit more variety than Midway, and I'll go into a bit more detail as to why that is in a minute. So I ran home with Guadalcanal and I saved like crazy, only to go back to the shop a few weeks later and find that, not surprisingly, Midway had been sold. They never did restock them, sadly. I did learn off the shopkeeper that the guy who bought Midway was equally peeved that some guy had come and bought Guadalcanal. So there was a sort of balance of annoyance there. But I was delighted because I got back to my student accommodation, as it were, and found that to start playing, all I had to contend with was this. Now, that is just neglect on my part. You can tell that I left that out in the sun with stuff piled on it just a little bit too long. In a new game, it would look a bit less shabby than this. But, and here's where the beauty of this system lies, if you're an experienced wargamer, there's plenty for you here too, because in addition to that wafer-thin basic set of rules, in both games, you get these, a dedicated battle manual, which gives you scenarios. It gives you detailed rules, which flesh out the game a bit more, make it a bit more of a war game. Both of them are roughly the same size. There's about 48 to 50 pages worth of goodies. It's the same fine print as the basic rules, but there you've got a quick explanation of how to group your ships. Those are the scenarios. You've got US and Japanese forces, any special rules. What else do we have? Oh, and in both of these, a huge amount of space, and I mean a huge amount, is given over to historical commentary. And I must stress, for the period, I know historiography's moved on a bit since the 1990s, particularly when it comes to reinterpretations of Midway, but the information that you get in these was amazing. And I mean amazing. It was balanced. It represented the most up-to-date historical thinking at the time. And not only did you get the general overview historically of the campaign, but prior to playing each scenario, you get a massive write-up on the circumstances that led to it. So if you're someone like me who really likes the bigger picture and this is the historical positioning, you really want to understand what you're doing in this situation and why, these were great. For sheer immersiveness, having this write-up was absolutely fantastic. Not only that, it gets even better. There's something for the ship and aircraft geeks out there as well, because in the Guadalcanal battle manual as well as the Midway one, you get this, it's not overly detailed, but it's a decent breakdown of the statistics of the different units involved, and they're divided by broad categories: aircraft carriers, battleships, cruisers. With some rather nice illustrations too, and they perform the same service for aircraft as well. And you also get a word about organization. It wasn't until I bought this game that I fully understood the US Navy's, VB, VT, VS classification system. So thanks Avalon Hill and Smithsonian, they're great. And if that wasn't enough, you also get hints on play, and this is general advice about how you manage your forces, but also a few thoughts for both sides. How should you go about fighting this particular battle if you're the Allies or the US at Midway, or the Japanese, and very, very comprehensive, complex but comprehensive examples of play. So if you read these pages, you can follow along and you basically get a full playthrough of a turn. So you know exactly what you're doing. And if there were any unresolved questions from this in both games, they are solved in here. It is brilliant stuff. Optional rules, these are the ones I mentioned earlier. So in the basic game, one of the glaring omissions, and I'm not totally sure why they took this out of the basic game, fighters on both sides don't feature in the basic game. They are introduced in the advanced game. So there you go, there's the page on fighter combat. You can add them to your carrier and airbase complements. So that was a bit of a strange one for me, but I can see why they did it. If you play through the streamlined scenarios where you've only got your ships and your bombers to worry about, it does make your life easier when you're not bothering about organizing combat air patrols. Now, most of the time, I think aside from my introductory game, I've always played with fighters because you can't not. It's rude. And best of all, many best of alls in this, you get the other sources. And I know many games do include a bibliography at the end, but these guys included a rather nice one. They even give you movie recommendations. Apologies, and it shows the age of this one. That under movies for the Midway Battle Manual, they say only one movie really covers this topic. Midway with Charlton Heston, Henry Fonda, Glenn Ford, Toshiro Mifune, etc., etc. Now, if they ever republish this, they have a more recent movie to add. I won't get into the debate about whether it's a worthy successor to the older Midway or not, or whether they just make good bedfellows. And lastly, very handily from a wargamer's perspective, the key units of the game and what all their varied stats mean. Now that looks like a lot of information on those counters, and it is, but I am going to say that is one of the strengths of these two games, because the jury overall is a bit out as to how well they achieved this balance between something that's easily playable for newbies, and yet enough to satisfy the grognards out there. Not everyone's convinced. I am one of the people who is convinced, because I was beginning. I'd been into more, I'll call them more advanced war games for a couple of years when I bought this, and this Guadalcanal certainly scratched my itch. You can tell from this that I haven't actually played my own copy of Midway yet. Picking up on that unnecessary backstory about buying Guadalcanal earlier, many years later, I found this on eBay, much to my delight. And even better, it had never been played. So I got the joy of and I'm looking forward to punching out the counters. Plus, as an added bonus, it means I can hold this up to the camera, which, if my camera will just focus, you guys can see. So yeah, on the surface, a lot of complexity, but the way these ratings are organized, what it achieves in practice is that you have to do less thinking and worrying about the nitty-gritty, because the details are right there on the counter. To those of you who've played Avalanche Press's Great War at Sea series, I would say this game is comparable in terms of what's packed onto the ship and aircraft counters. In some respects, the combat is actually simpler. So what else do you get in the boxes? There's lots of stuff. Now for both games, again, these run on exactly the same principle, but these are the air operations cards for both sides. And they are very straightforward. I love the aesthetic. There's something nice about that 1990s look. And the illustrations, top-down views of the carriers are just nice. It's always nice to see Tone and Chikuma. They appear in Guadalcanal as well. Don't worry, guys. You get them there too. As indeed does the plucky little Zuiho. So, yep, she turns up too. And these are pretty straightforward. And again, they help. There's nice little summaries telling you what your carrier's capacity is, what your launch capacity is. It's another wrinkle in the game rules that I think is nice and has shown a lot of thought. You can't just fling all your aircraft out if you want to. You can launch everything and exceed your launch capacity limit if you want to, but that then feeds into another of the optional rules where you have to differentiate between normal strike, which is a slightly more capable air package if you launch within your launch limits, or a maximum strike if you go a bit beyond your capability, but you put every plane in the air, but it results in delays. Your fuel is restricted, your planes suffer from a slightly shorter range because some of them have had to loiter around waiting for the others to catch up. And it's all expressed visually right there. So, you don't have to keep looking up rules. It's all there. In both games, you get an identical one of these. This is the screen. I like the screen. Such a lovely oldie-worldy solution to achieving fog of war. You place this between the two players to hide their search maps. And it's so useful. Look at all the information you get on that. Complete sequence of play, search charts, victory points charts, levels of damage, a reminder of how those bits of the combat rules work. If you're playing with the optional submarine rules, you get those too. So the beauty is, I hope it's giving the impression so far that you start out with a very basic simulation of both Midway and the Guadalcanal campaign. But what this game allows you to do is get used to that and then incrementally build in more detail. You don't have to throw all the optional rules in if you don't want to. It's entirely, flavor according to your taste, I think is the word for it. And we've only just got a couple more things to show you. These are the search boards. Whoop. Don't put me in charge of navigation. Certainly not in flight. So I've chosen these because the Midway boards are identical in physical format. And look how lovely these hard-mounted things are. I mean, talk about theme. I can almost imagine climbing into the rear gunner's seat of a Dauntless, carrying a slightly more protected version of these with my markers and my navigational instruments. Or if I'm feeling that way inclined, into the equivalent position on my Val or Kate. And so each player has one of these. The Midway one obviously has much fewer land masses. You've got a tiny little spot in the center for Midway, and there's lots of empty ocean around it. But the Solomons gives us a bit more of an interesting mix. So this is very important. This is the area on which both players maneuver their task force markers. So this is also how you do your searching. So each one of you will have one of these. Did I spill something on that many years ago? I must have done. And you'll move your task forces each turn. And when you launch your search planes, you call out search hexes. If you're playing the basic rules, you find the other guy immediately if he's in the hex. If you're playing the advanced rules, which I prefer, you have to roll off to see how good a sighting you get. Fairly standard fare for War in the Pacific games, but again, they've covered all the main bases. And then finally, you get this chunky monster, which is let me unfold it. This is the battle board, and this is a wonderful multi-function bit of kit because you can do anything on this. You can launch airstrikes on it. You can launch you can carry out day surface actions if you're crazy. Night surface actions if you're crazy, or if you're Japanese. I mean, obviously they have less to fear from a night surface action. It's a wonderful multi-purpose board. You've got all the rules reminders pertinent to both air combat and surface combat that you would need on these. So in essence, I'm certainly from appearances, this is a simulation that's taken consideration of most, if not all, of the key elements of carrier and air naval warfare in the Pacific during the early part of the Second World War. Now, they never produced any titles covering the later battles, but I think that was probably based on a conscious decision, because the balance of the Pacific War was very largely decided within the confines of 1942. And we're probably all saying that with the benefit of hindsight, but still, all the knife-edge carrier actions take place during that year. So it makes sense that the games focus on them. So we have the tools, courtesy of these games, to carry out these battles, I should say, at both the strategic and to some degree at the tactical level as well. Now, the question is, how do they play? I have been playing this one on and off since 1998, which was when I bought it. And knowing aside from the different order of battle that it plays almost identically to this, I personally feel it's a good system, but it's all right for me to just say that. It would be very nice to demonstrate to you guys why I think so. And that, of course, is going to be the subject of the next video, because I realize I've been rambling quite a bit on this one. So I hope you've enjoyed that. I hope it's given you a good sense of what you get in the box with the Smithsonian's Guadalcanal and Midway. And in the next video, I will choose one of these games, or better yet, I've got an idea. I will leave the comments open for a day or two. If you guys have a preference for Midway or Guadalcanal, please do say. We'll take a vote on it and I'll play the majority vote. If you prefer Guadalcanal, could you let me know if you want the Battle of the Coral Sea, the Battle of the Eastern Solomons, or the... Oh, wait, hang on. Let me just check those are available. Bad Andrew. Wait one. Having said I play this, I just don't want to offer you the Coral Sea if it's not an option. So hang on. No, Eastern Solomons, Santa Cruz. Oh, they don't. Sorry, they have left out the Battle of the Coral Sea. Absolutely unforgivable. So your options, if you go for Guadalcanal, you can the Battle of the Eastern Solomons, the Battle of Santa Cruz, or the aftermath period where you get that weird situation where the Japanese only have Junyo and the US only have Enterprise, and the battleships of both sides are shaping up for the linked battles of the Friday the 13th and then the big battleship showdown on November the 15th. But anyway, sorry about that. Very nearly promised you a battle I couldn't deliver on. But yeah, get busy in the comments, guys. If you have a preference for any one of, I'll say 3 of the 4 great carrier battles of 1942, let me know which one, and I will happily use it as the demo for showing you how this game works. But thank you so much in the meantime for watching this video and joining me as I go very happily down memory lane with a great series that in my view should have carried on a very fruitful partnership. And I look forward to hearing from you. Thanks for your company as always, and look forward to seeing you in the next video, whichever battle we meet up to play. Till then, take care. Bye.